How powerful is the second law of the 7 laws of a property investor? This is what I'm going to discuss with you today. Now, if you combine the 0th law plus the first law plus the second law, you're going to get results that you never ever in your life thought would be possible. I'm Dreyer. I'm the founder of the Wealth Creators Method, where we help entrepreneurs and investors to create, to grow, and to protect their wealth by teaching the 4 high-value skill sets. And we apply that in business, cryptos, property. So today, welcome to the 7 laws of a property investor, where I'm going to discuss the second law. And the second law simply says this: income is more important than capital. And I like to take you back to how I discovered this and the problem that I was facing, and that I discover most people are facing simply because they don't understand the second law. So when I started looking at property, it all happened, and I referred back to that in the first law. So if you haven't listened to that law, please make sure that you do. When I started adding up all the costs associated with that first house that I bought, and I discovered that this is the worst investment that I could ever make in my life. And this is going to keep me from achieving my dream, which at that point in my life was financial freedom. But then a thought came up, and the thought was basically this: what would happen if I've used the same property, the house that I've bought, but I rented this house out? In other words, I started getting income from that. And the sums were like day and night, the difference between the two. And that is where my journey actually started, because then I asked a question: but what growth must I get in order to get to my, what we call financial freedom growth rate? So I first had to determine what's my financial freedom growth rate, and then what's my IGR, in other words, my investment growth rate, and can this property give me? Now, by the way, that property could not give it to me. But then the question was, but what if I can find a property that can give me this that I need? In other words, from an investment out of my own pocket. And this is where the process started. And this is where I discovered the second law, that income is more important than capital. Because up to that stage, my whole philosophy and my way of thinking was that a property could give you the capital growth, and that what you're looking for in property was the capital growth. But because of this new insight, I started doing the calculations, and I discovered that income is a lot more important than capital, because you can even get a property that's going to give you negative capital growth and outperform any property with an incredible capital growth. Right, so this is where the journey started, but it was because of the first law, where I started investing in myself, changing my mindset, and now start investing in property into the 27 variables. And that relates back to the first, or the 0th law, that simply says, but do you really want this? In other words, what's your intent? And my intent was, at the age of 30, to be at least financially free before the age of 40. So that's the reason why I started putting in this amount of effort in order to gain the skills. Because by then I understood the risk. There are 27 variables, and risk is when you do not know what you're doing. So that's where my journey started. And then I started getting and enhancing my skills up to a stage where I discovered my first property that was for free. And that to me was amazing. But I wasn't 100% sure about the legal aspects and stuff like that. So I saw a friend that was also an attorney, and I showed him the calculations, and he was actually very, very disappointed in what I planned to do and to buy this property. And he said to me, this is basically a dilapidated property. It's definitely not in a good area. You're going to battle to offset this property, in other words, to sell this property, because this property has been on the market for several months, and you're not going to gain any capital gains in the process. So I said to him, but I'm not looking for the capital growth, I'm looking for the income. And he said to me, why? Because in the first year, you more or less just going to break even. I said to him, as long as I can break even, this is going to be an incredible pension. And he says, rather buy a property that's going to give you an incredible capital growth, use that money, bring it back, roll it over, and in 10 years time or 20 years from now on, you're going to be happy. And I said to him, let's talk about money, because I don't think that you've got this concept that I want to apply for myself. And that is, I know of no investment, no pension fund, provident fund, no retirement annuity, where in 10 years or 12 years can give me basically my current income at that stage, plus it's not going to cost me a single cent. In other words, I literally, because of the cash flow of this property, even if there's not a cent capital growth on this property, right, I'm still going to have a pension that has cost me nothing. And I know of no other investment that can give me this. Of course, at that stage, that was when I started discovering this, right? So I was really chuffed up with this idea. And maybe I wanted to prove a point, because I bought that property. And because of that property, the basis and this second law that income is more important than capital, we were in a position to retire at the age of 37. Now, this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to income is more important than capital. So I treat, and I want to give you and offer you this tip, I treat each and every property as if it is a business. And if you look at a business, the first thing that you need to know about a business is that cash flow is king. In other words, income is more important than capital. So if you treat your property as a business, the outcome of that is that you're going to learn, without you actually knowing it, another skill. And that skill is what it's all about. Because if you then combine that property in the right entity, and you combine the 4 high value skills, financial skills and mental skills, to this, you offset literally any risk that can be thrown to you in the property market. If there's no tenant, how are you going to handle that if, well, you've got no tenant if you want to go for capital growth, but you're going to get a pathetic growth on your investment? Because as you see in the webinar, the Property Accelerator webinar, that there's no comparison. You're going to lose immense amounts of money by thinking that capital growth is the right thing. And I'll give you the Excel spreadsheet and as well as the training to show you why I'm saying this. And this is what I believed up to that point where I started to invest in myself. And I discovered that everything that I thought about money and about properties were based on lies. So that is the first thing. In other words, this thing is going to give you income. And now, when you do not have tenants, how are you going to offset that if this rely on income? And this is where this first law comes in. When you put that into an entity, there are ways that we can offset that, even if there's no tenant. It's not going to have an effect. But not only that, if there's hyperinflation, you're going to benefit from the second law and the first law. If there's a recession, you're going to benefit from that. If the interest rate goes up from, let's say, 7-8% to 24%, there's no risk, because this is a function of a law. The function of the law is to protect you as long as you stay within this law. But I need to understand the law and how to apply the law and how to build the skills in order to apply this law in my own life. And by simply doing that, my life changed. To such an extent that at 37, we were financially free because of property. And because of the first law and the 0th law and the second law. And the second law says income is more important than capital. Now, there's a lot of people that's not going to agree with me, but I guarantee you that I will outperform you on a long-term basis if you try to build it on capital. And this is exactly what I'm busy doing with the 500K challenge, where I show people that I can take 100 Rand or $6.52, take that to 500,000 Rands within a year. At the moment, it's more than 2 million 6 months later. And then base that by applying the second law, the first law and the 0th law to property as the baseline to give me security. And this is what we're doing at the Property Accelerator masterclass, where I'm taking you through the process to show you how to accelerate this. And with one single property, with one property that I'm busy proving right now at this moment through the 500K challenge, that we can take that and build a portfolio of 20 to 30 million within a 5-year period. Now, I think that you'll agree with me that most people will be able to retire within 5 years And my students are doing that with one single property, not many properties, one single property, simply because they understand and they've got the zero law. They know exactly what it is that they want. And in the webinar, I'm going to help you to get there. And then the first law, to invest in yourself. And I'm going to give you tools in order to do that. And then the second law is that income is more important than capital, and why that is so important. So if this is something that you are interested and you think that you are prepared to invest like 2 hours to 3 hours to start off with, I'd like to invite you to the Property Accelerator Masterclass, where I'm going to take you through the process and I'm going to show you what I've been doing and what I'm doing right now, and how you can use these laws that I'm busy giving you, how to use these laws in order to accelerate your growth on your property so that you can be financially free in 5 to 7 years from now. There are some of my students that have done it within a year, not only with the property, but by applying all these laws, as well as the high value skill sets. If you found value in this, please give me a thumbs up. Like this video, because this is going to help with the algorithm in order to educate other people and help them in the process. And then secondly, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, click that bell icon so that you'll be notified as soon as the next lesson. And I do these lessons basically on a week-to-week basis, not only on property, although you're going to receive the property ones, but also in terms of business, the mental side, as well as cryptocurrencies. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you then in the next one.